Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. For those of you joining me for the first time, I am Melissa Reed. I'm an artist from Pennsylvania. I am working today on an 8-inch by 8-inch cradled wooden panel. I'm not going to gesso this first. Sometimes I do, but this time I'm just going to forgo that because I'm going to be covering the entire thing in some of those music sheets that I have there. So none of the wood is going to actually be visible anyway. So these are just pages out of a missalette that I got at a thrift store near my house, and I'm just cutting off the borders and the margins of those papers just so we go straight to the words and music on there. Not super important, but I didn't want a lot of blank space. I'm not exactly sure what's going to be visible because this is just the first layer of the piece that I'm going to be making here. But I know that I don't want a lot of blank white space, so I just went ahead and took this off ahead of time. I am using Liquitex matte gel medium to glue those pages down. That's typically what I use for all of my collage. You're going to find a link to that as well as to these cradled wooden boards and all of my other frequently used items in the description of this video. I'll also have a list of the specific paints and items that I used specifically for this video listed for you as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get those glued down really well. Once I have them glued down, I take another layer of that and put it all over the top of it because I want to make sure that they are fastened down really well. And then I'm just taking an old gift card and smoothing out any of the wrinkles that appear. I find that when I use this kind of thin paper, it's very easy to get a little bit of buckling and some wrinkles and air pockets underneath. And you don't want to have that because it's going to become a point of failure when the piece is finished. It could easily tear there or get caught on something, and you just want to make sure that those are taken care of. So I didn't even let that completely dry. I just went in with my Golden Brand Azo Gold, which is one of my favorite colors. I'm building layers at this point. Actual physical layers of paper and also layers of paint and texture. I like to do this in all of my painting because it makes everything a little more interesting when you can see some of these layers peeking out. So that is a little bit of Payne's gray that I have that I rolled onto a piece of scrap paper, and then I rolled that brayer directly over top of what I already had going on the board there. And I did that. I could have just used a piece of throwaway paper, but because I used another piece of the music sheet there, I can then go ahead and use that in an upcoming project, and I'll already have something ready to go. So you can see that I went ahead and dried that with a hair dryer. I really just wanted to speed up the process and be able to continue working on it without giving it a lot of dry time. But I did want to have it dry before I started the next layer. I also wanted to be able to trim it down too, so that's another reason why I went ahead and dried it. And I just took my straight edge there, my X-Acto knife, just trimming off any of the excess that was around the edges there. Now I'm sure you can see that line that's very prominent down the center. That's where the pages overlapped, and it kind of bugged me a little bit in the beginning, but you can't even see it in the end, so I'm kind of okay with it. I am going in there with Artist's Loft professional grade paint there. Now they've discontinued this line, at least near me. I've not been able to find it anywhere, but they had this was a really great line of paint, and it was very affordable. I picked this up at Michael's on clearance before it went away entirely. And the colors that I'm using there are Iridescent Bright Gold and also Iridescent Rich Copper. I wanted to add some metallics into this piece because I don't often use metallics, and I thought they would look really cool with the colors that I had going on, and I was right. I really like the way that turned out. And also, I really didn't know what I was going to do with this piece because, as you know, if you've watched any of my other videos, I am an intuitive artist, which typically means I don't start my projects with much of an idea. I knew I wanted to use some book pages, and that was kind of it for this one. So once I got the pages down, I just, in my head, thought, what do I want to use for a color? And that's where I started going. So what you saw me put on there that's creating all of those magical little fingers on there is acrylic ink. That's Daler-Rowney, and that is the indigo color, which after this project is my new favorite color. I absolutely love that. And I love the effect that it gave there when I laid the color down and sprayed it with my water bottle. That was just some water. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen when it dried because sometimes you'll get these really nice fractal kind of patterns appear when you're doing different things with different media. And then when they dry, they sort of just dissipate and go away. But I was very pleased that when I took the hair dryer to that and let it all come completely dry, they stayed and I was able to keep that interesting detail. So once I got that part done, I honestly had absolutely no idea where I wanted to go with this piece next. And I've mentioned before that when I get that kind of block or I reach that point in my work, I often will sleep on it or let it sit for a few hours and go back with a fresh eye. And that's exactly what I did at that point. I went to sleep and woke up and suddenly just knew that what I wanted to do was create these very geometric, I'm basically just making columns and squares and rectangles here because what those very straight and perfect lines are going to do is contrast very highly with all of those organic shapes that I have going on from the fractals that appeared when putting that ink down and spraying it with water. So that was the idea that I had when I looked at it, and I love the way it turned out. So now I did not measure any of this. I have my cutting board underneath there that I loosely started just kind of giving myself my straight edge a little bit of a guide so that I wasn't going to be putting them on crooked, because it's important when you want to do work that is contrasting and work that if you are specifically trying to make straight lines, you need them to be very straight. If you are specifically trying to make organic shapes, it should be obviously organic because otherwise it can just start looking like maybe it wasn't intentional and it was a little less planned out. And I don't mean planned out by meaning that the piece was planned out entirely, but it starts to look amateurish, I guess, maybe is what I want to say there. So you want to make sure that whatever your intention is, it looks intentional. At least I shouldn't make that broad general statement. You make your art however you want to make it. But for this piece and for what I had in mind here, that's what I wanted. So once I got those lines down, at least this set of lines, I decided I wanted to go in and fill them in with some of that ink. And at first I tried using my pen and nib and I was not getting the results that I wanted at all. So what I did then was get a little brush. This is a rigger brush that I got at Michael's. Love this thing. I don't have the steadiest hands in the world, and just the way this brush operates, I really didn't have any kind of issues. So you can see here what I'm doing is filling in, and this is with the acrylic ink. So, I mean, it's basically like it's a liquid. So you can definitely understand where a mess could happen there, and it's just not. It was working beautifully. But I went in and started using the squares that I drew, but I was having such an easy time keeping straight, steady lines with this rigger brush that where I saw that maybe I needed some more squares, even if they weren't already drawn in, I just went in and freehanded it with this, and it worked out perfectly well. So I got this one at Michael's. I don't know if I'll be able to get a link for that. I will take a look. If not, I will put up something similar for you. If you don't have a brush like this and you do fine line, fine detail work, highly recommend getting one of these. It wasn't crazy expensive. This is a little bit of a better quality one because I wanted it to last. I've had some issues with cheaper brushes. I'm sure you know what I mean. The bristles fall out and end up in your paintings, and it's very frustrating. But it wasn't crazy expensive. I think I might have paid like $15 or $16 for it. I honestly can't remember. But yeah, if you do any fine line or fine detail work with ink or watercolors or anything, that is really kind of a go-to thing for you there. This is really one of the first times that I've used this brush, which, explains a little bit of my awe over how wonderful it is. I'm sure some of you have them and have been using them forever. But anyway, enough about the brush. It's great. Highly recommend it. But yeah, so I'm just going through here and creating these almost like pixelated squares that are contrasting from that wonderful organic shape that I have going on at where the ink and water made those designs. And I'm just going to go through here and add them wherever I feel like they need to be added. So I want the majority of them to be adjacent, so like diagonal from each other. But not all of them. I don't want this to be regular in any sort of way, and I'm not looking to make a pattern here. I am just going for purely abstract and whatever looks right to me when I'm going to make the next one, if that makes any sense to you, because that's, again, how I typically do my paintings. When I said that I am an intuitive artist and, I don't go in with a lot of a plan, this is part of it. It's what is the next move I'm going to make? And that move is based off of the move that I'm making right now, and so on and so forth. And that's how the piece forms and grows. It's like having a conversation with the piece itself. I don't impose too much of my will. I will start it, but then I will kind of let each move that I make dictate the next one, and the piece will tell me what needs to be done next. So this is where I start going in and freehanding. I'm using those lines that I have on there just as kind of a guide for my hand. And you'll notice that if I'm putting one of those squares in near where there is another one, I will start that line on the line that's already there from that other square, just to get a nice continuity of line going. And it's a good way to also ensure that I'm going to keep everything nice and straight and square where I want it to be. So I let those dry and wanted to take a look at it again, and decided I wanted to continue that pattern over onto the other side of the piece. And I'm just going in again with my straight edge and drawing some more of those lines, because while I was okay freehanding to a certain extent, I did want to make sure that those lines were going to be nice and straight. And I also wanted to continue the lines themselves over there, not just the boxes, um, just to make everything make a little more visual sense. Now, I don't want the entire piece covered with those boxes. I'm just going in sporadically. I do want there to be a little bit of carryover from one side to the other, but it's not like a solid grid or anything like that. I think that if I had planned it out, or if I was going to do this type of thing again, which I probably am because I like the way that it looks, and I'm just thinking of more ideas as I'm watching this video while I'm doing the voiceover. So we'll probably continue with this for a little while in the next couple of weeks. Excuse me. But I think I might put those lines down first. It's not a big deal, and because I used a dark color there with that indigo, you can't see the line from the Micron pen going up to it or going through it. But let's say I wanted to do that with a white or something lighter colored there. I would definitely want those lines to be underneath it. So I would probably go ahead and lay those in first before I put that ink down, or some more paint or something like that, just to I don't like the look of something just sitting right on top of the canvas or the board. So this would integrate it a little bit better. Again, because everything is so dark, it doesn't matter and you can't tell. But if you wanted to do that and make those lines a little more integrated into the piece and not just sitting on top, just do those first, and then your other layers can go on top of them with some of them peeking through. And as always, when I'm doing a piece like this, I'm thinking about the next step as I'm working on the step that I'm currently doing. So, what might I want to do next? I had originally thought about maybe putting some of my ransom note style lettering or perhaps an image. I kind of thought originally about putting a sketch of an insect in there somewhere, like a moth or something, which would have looked pretty cool. But I honestly just don't think it needed it. And as I'm going through and finishing up with the squares, and incidentally, people always ask me, how do you know when it's finished? The answer to that is kind of complicated and kind of simple. There's no real formulaic answer to that. I know when I look at it and I don't see anything else that needs done, if that makes any sense. So, when will I know to stop putting squares on there? That's the answer. When I step away from it and come back and it feels done and I don't feel like any areas are lacking or anything is missing just a little bit more. But anyway, as far as adding anything else to it, once I did get to that point where the squares had said that there were enough, I didn't really think that it needed anything else either. I thought that anything else was going to end up making it look a little too crowded and kind of just unnecessary and like it didn't fit. Now, could I have done that maybe in a previous step, added something like I'd said, maybe that moth sketch or something like that? Sure, I could have, and I could have worked those squares around there, but the way that I did it, I just don't really think it needed anything. I like the simplicity of it. I mean, it is very much just an abstract piece of art. It's very contrasting with the geometric shapes of the squares and rectangles and the very organic fractal-like pattern from the sprayed ink, and I think it just worked out perfectly the way that it was. Now, might I explore those ideas in future pieces? Definitely, because I think there's a lot of cool things that could happen there. But for this one, this was where it ended, and I really liked the result that I got. So I typically, to finish a piece, I have my sponge roller and my matte black paint that I put around the edges. But I wanted to just go in with this little, I think that's like a 1/2 inch brush there, and dipped it directly into that same indigo blue paint and just went around all of the sides. And it almost looks like a blue stain when you get it on there. You can still see a little bit of the wood grain through there, which I thought was cool. And you see me there just taking a wet paper towel. Because I have all of that matte medium on the whole entire piece, while that ink is still wet, if I do get some of it on the front where I don't want it to be, as long as I'm quick about it, I can just go ahead and wipe that right off with my wet paper towel there. But I like the way the blue works. I'm glad I made that decision as opposed to black. Black would have also worked because I do have the black lines from the Micron, but that really kind of drew the color that I used in the piece down around the sides to kind of just bring it even more continuity. I know I have some of this off camera there, but I'm literally just painting the sides there with that little brush, and I'm going to show you here in just a few minutes what this all looks like once it is dried. I am spraying this with a coat of Krylon triple thick acrylic spray, and here is the end result. What I love about this piece most is it's slightly different for me, but yet still employs a lot of the same techniques that I use. So I am carrying things over from my past body of work, which makes the work itself a little more cohesive, and you can tell that it was all done by the same artist. But I absolutely love the colors best out of this piece. That is my favorite part of it. The metallics and with the azo gold and mostly that beautiful deep indigo blue color that I am just shocked I haven't used yet. I don't have it in a paint, I just have it in the acrylic ink, but I'm definitely going to look for that to add to my collection. But yeah, that's what we've got for today. And I hope you like what I did. If you do like it, give me a thumbs up. It helps my channel out a lot. And thanks to everyone who's been subscribing. I appreciate it so much. If you haven't had a chance yet, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell notifications. I do put out a new video every Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And this item will be up for sale on my Etsy shop. There are links to that and my other social media in the description of this video. Thank you all so much, and I can't wait to see you again back here next week. Take care.